Just imagine you walk into a room tomorrow. Don't say a word. Don't introduce yourself. Just stand there. Within seconds, everyone in that room has already decided who you are. Not because they know your name, not because they've heard your story, not because they've taken the time to understand you, but because of something you communicated without ever opening your mouth. Think about that. Long before anyone discovers how intelligent you are, they've already decided how seriously to take you. Long before your achievements have a chance to speak, your presence already has. And whether that's fair has never really mattered, because people don't meet your potential first. They meet your presence. And whether you realize it or not, it has been speaking for you all along. Tomorrow, someone will decide how much respect you deserve before you say a single word. They won't ask where you studied. They won't know how many nights you sacrificed. They won't see the battles you've already survived. Yet somehow, they'll still decide where to place you. Above them, beside them, or beneath them. Here's the frightening part. You probably won't even notice it happening, because this silent conversation happens every single day. It happens during job interviews when two candidates walk in with the same qualifications, but only one feels like a leader. It happens on first dates, before either person finishes their first sentence. It happens in business meetings where one voice instantly commands attention, while another slowly disappears into the background. The strange part is, it has very little to do with talent, and far more to do with perception. Most people grow up believing respect is something you earn. Work hard, stay humble, be kind. Eventually, people will recognize your value. It's a comforting belief. But reality plays by different rules. Because before people respect your ideas, they decide whether your ideas deserve their attention. Before they trust your experience, they measure your confidence. And before they believe your words, they've already believed something about you. The question is, what did they believe? Almost nobody teaches you this. Schools don't. Parents rarely do. Society simply tells you, just be yourself. But what if being yourself was never the problem? What if you've been sending signals without realizing they exist? Signals that quietly influence how seriously people take you, how much they trust you, and whether they respect you before you've even introduced yourself. More than 20 years ago, one man tried to explain this invisible game. His name was Robert Greene, and he captured it in a single sentence, a sentence that would become one of the most misunderstood laws in modern psychology and power. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. At first, it sounds arrogant, almost manipulative, as if Robert Greene was telling people to pretend, to chase status, to become someone they're not. But that's not what he meant. Not even close. In fact, most people who quote this law completely miss the psychological truth hidden beneath it. A truth so powerful that once you understand it, you'll never enter another room the same way again. The moment most people hear Robert Greene's Law 34, they make the same mistake. They think it's about looking rich, wearing expensive clothes, buying luxury watches, driving expensive cars, creating an image of success. But if that's what you took from this law, you completely missed the point. Because Robert Greene wasn't writing about money. He was writing about perception. And those are two very different things. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who walked into a room wearing an expensive suit, yet somehow looked insecure? They had the watch, the shoes, the car, the appearance, but within minutes, everyone sensed something wasn't real. Now think about someone else. Someone wearing nothing extraordinary. No luxury brands, no designer labels. Yet the moment they walked in, the room became quieter. People listened, not because they demanded attention, but because they naturally attracted it. What's the difference? It isn't wealth, it isn't fashion, and it certainly isn't luck. It's something far more subtle. Robert Greene understood a truth that most people spend their entire lives ignoring. People don't respond to what you own. They respond to what you believe about yourself. That's why confidence can't be bought, presence can't be borrowed, and respect can't be faked for very long. Because eventually every mask slips. The world isn't looking for perfection, it's looking for consistency. The way you walk, the way you sit, the way you make eye contact, the way you pause before speaking, the way you carry yourself when nobody is applauding. These tiny signals create a story in other people's minds, a story that asks one silent question: does this person value themselves? And here's the uncomfortable reality. If your own behavior quietly answers, no, why would anyone else answer differently? Robert Greene didn't tell people to become kings. He told them something much more profound. Stop behaving like someone waiting for permission to matter. Because the world often reflects the standard you quietly set for yourself. But Robert Greene didn't invent this idea. He found it in the life of a man who had no title, no extraordinary wealth, and yet somehow convinced the most powerful people in England to follow his lead. His name was Beau Brummell, and his story changed the psychology of respect forever. The strange thing about Beau Brummell is that history says he should have been ordinary. He had no throne, no army followed him. History rarely remembers men like him. And yet, when he entered a room, even princes paid attention. That wasn't normal. And Robert Greene couldn't ignore it. Imagine standing in London over 200 years ago. You look around and every powerful man is trying to impress everyone else. Gold stitched into jackets, jewels catching the candlelight, bright colors, louder fashion, bigger displays of wealth. Everyone is trying to announce, "Look how important I am." Then someone else walks in. No gold, no diamonds, no extravagant costume, just a perfectly tailored dark coat, immaculate grooming, calm eyes, unhurried movements. Nothing about him asks for attention, yet somehow the entire room gives it to him anyway. That's Beau Brummell. And here's what fascinated Robert Greene. Brummell never chased status. He behaved as though status had already chosen him. There's a difference. The men around him were trying to convince the world they mattered. Brummell behaved as though that question had already been answered. People noticed. Then something remarkable happened. The same aristocrats who laughed at simplicity started copying it. The future King of England began seeking Brummell's approval. Not because Brummell demanded respect, because he never looked like a man asking for it. Think about your own life. Have you ever met someone who walks into a room without trying to impress anyone, yet somehow becomes the center of attention? You've seen it, maybe at work, maybe at university, maybe in a meeting. Nobody announces them. Nobody introduces them as important, yet people naturally listen. Why? What are they doing differently? Robert Greene believed the answer wasn't found in their clothes. It wasn't even found in their confidence. It was hidden somewhere much deeper, inside the way the human mind makes decisions. Here's something most people never realize. The moment someone sees you, their mind begins writing a story. Not with words, with impressions. Before you've shared an opinion, that story has already begun. Before you've explained who you are, your brain has quietly answered a different question. Who does this person believe they are? And that changes everything. Because human beings don't simply react to appearances, they react to meaning. Two people can wear the exact same suit. One looks powerful, the other looks uncomfortable. Why? The suit didn't change. The person inside it did. The same thing happens every day. One employee walks into a meeting. People instinctively pay attention. Another employee says something equally intelligent and gets interrupted. One entrepreneur walks into a room full of investors and people lean forward. Another has a better business, yet struggles to hold anyone's attention. The difference often isn't ability. It's the story people create before ability has a chance to speak. Now ask yourself something. Have you ever caught yourself judging someone before they even finished introducing themselves? Of course you have. Everyone has. Not because people are cruel, because the human brain was designed to make fast decisions. Thousands of years ago, those quick decisions helped us survive. Today, they shape careers, relationships, opportunities, without anyone realizing it. That's why Robert Greene's Law 34 has survived for decades. It isn't telling you to pretend. It isn't telling you to buy expensive things. It isn't telling you to become someone you're not. It's telling you something much more uncomfortable. Whether you intend to or not, you are constantly teaching people how to treat you. Not through your words, but through the standards you quietly set for yourself. Your posture, your composure, your eye contact, the way you enter a room, the way you respond under pressure. Those tiny details seem insignificant until you realize they become the first chapter of the story people write about you. And once that story begins, every new action either strengthens it or challenges it. That's exactly what Beau Brummell understood. He never tried to convince people he was important. He simply refused to behave like someone who wasn't. Which leads to the question that really matters. If respect begins long before words, can you actually change the story people tell themselves about you without pretending to be someone else? The answer is yes, but it begins somewhere most people never think to look. So, where does all of this leave you? If people really begin judging you before you speak, does that mean respect is nothing more than an illusion? Not at all. In fact, this is where Robert Greene's law is often misunderstood, because the goal was never to become someone else. The goal was to stop communicating uncertainty without even realizing you were doing it. Think about the people you've respected throughout your life. Not because of what they owned, not because of the position they held, but whenever they walked into a room, they looked completely comfortable being themselves. They never seemed in a hurry to prove their worth. And somehow that made everyone else believe in it too. That's the strange thing about confidence. The louder it becomes, the less convincing it usually feels. Real confidence is remarkably quiet. It doesn't interrupt. It doesn't compete. It doesn't chase attention. It simply refuses to chase approval. There's a difference, and people notice it even if they can't explain why. This is why Beau Brummell fascinated Robert Greene. It wasn't his clothes. It wasn't his reputation. It was the quiet certainty behind both. He carried himself as though his value had already been decided, not by society, but by himself. That's what people responded to. Not perfection, not wealth, but certainty. And certainty changes behavior. One day, you stop explaining every decision you make. You become comfortable with silence instead of rushing to fill it. Conversations feel different. Not because you've learned a new technique, but because you've stopped asking everyone else to confirm your worth. Without realizing it, your presence begins telling a new story. One that says, I know who I am. And for the first time, other people begin believing it too. Because the standards you quietly set for yourself have a way of becoming the standards the world reflects back to you. Now let's go back to where this story began. A crowded room and a single question. What happens before you speak? At the beginning of this video, that moment probably felt unfair. Now it should feel different, because you've discovered something most people never do. Respect doesn't begin the moment people hear your voice. It begins long before that, in the way you carry yourself, in the standards you live by, in the silent message your behavior repeats every single day. That's the deeper meaning behind Robert Greene's Law 34. It was never about pretending to be important. It was about refusing to behave as though you weren't. Think about how many opportunities disappear, not because people lack talent, but because they quietly convince themselves they don't belong. A brilliant idea never gets shared. A promotion is never requested. A business never gets started, not because the ability wasn't there, but because the person carrying it kept waiting for permission. Permission to speak, permission to lead, permission to matter. Robert Greene's warning is simple. If you don't decide your own value, the world will happily decide it for you. And once that happens, changing people's minds becomes much harder. So tomorrow, when you walk into your next meeting, your next interview, or simply into a room full of strangers, don't think about impressing anyone. Don't think about looking powerful. Don't think about appearing successful. Think about something much simpler. Walk in as someone who no longer needs permission to belong there. Because that's the difference between confidence and performance. Performance asks, "Do you accept me?" Confidence quietly answers, "I've already accepted myself." And that single shift changes far more than your posture. It changes the story people begin writing about you before you've spoken a single word. And perhaps that's what Robert Greene was trying to teach all along. Here's the irony. Most people spend their lives trying to earn respect without ever asking a more important question. What version of myself do I introduce to the world every single day? Because that's what people remember. Not your intentions, not your potential. The version of you that repeatedly shows up. The one that hesitates, or the one that acts. The one that waits for permission, or the one that quietly belongs. And here's the truth Robert Greene wanted people to confront. The world is constantly responding to something. The question is, what is it responding to? Is it responding to your achievements? Sometimes. Your appearance? And occasionally, your words. Only after you've spoken them. But long before any of that, it's responding to the relationship you have with yourself. Because every decision you make quietly answers a question. How do I see myself? And people have an extraordinary ability to sense that answer, even when nobody says it out loud. Maybe that's why two people can have the same education, the same experience, even the same opportunity, yet leave completely different impressions. One spends the entire conversation trying to prove they deserve to be there. The other simply behaves as though they do. The difference isn't ego, it's certainty. And certainty is surprisingly quiet. Perhaps that's the real lesson behind Law 34. Don't act like a king, but stop living like someone waiting for permission to matter. Because every day you wait, someone else decides the story for you. One day, people will forget the clothes you wore. They'll forget the job title on your business card. They'll forget the exact words you said, but they won't forget the feeling you left behind. Presence has always outlived appearance, and self-respect has always outlived performance. Tomorrow, another door will open, another room will be waiting, another first impression will quietly be formed. You can't stop that. No one can. But this time, you won't wonder what people are thinking. You'll remember something far more important. The first person who must believe in your value has never been standing inside that room. It has always been the person reaching for the door. Walk in. Say nothing. Let your presence speak. And make sure it's finally telling the truth. Rise beyond limits.